Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 64 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of hot hatches. And in this particular episode, we're not exactly featuring a hot hatch as such. It certainly is a hatchback, but it's not a car which many people would associate with the word hot in any sense. This is a vehicle which is kind of notorious for Mercedes as being not necessarily a bad decision, because they did sell thousands of them, but not the most advised decision. Now, the A-Class is a proper, stylish, functional, pretty cool hatchback. This first iteration of the A-Class, though, wasn't, to say the least. It's a dumpy, squashed-looking version of a normal Mercedes. It doesn't look like its own model. It looks like you essentially took something like a C-Class wagon and squished it right down. That's not really a good start. Add on top of that the fact that the car, of course, failed one at least of its emergency swerve tests, and that doesn't exactly help the image that they were trying to go for of being a safe, practical, everyday family runabout. However, can the car redeem itself in terms of performance? Because one of the things that Mercedes cars are generally very good at is going quick. Even the ones which aren't necessarily geared towards performance can be tuned to be fast cars. And this car, of course, has been on Gran Turismo for a fair while now. So, does it deserve some use? Well, consider what you get, because many people don't own this car, so some of these numbers will probably be new to some people watching this. First of all, the price. This is a pretty affordable Mercedes. 33 grand is very cheap compared to many of the other Merc models, which tend to be six figures or more. So that's a pretty good start. It's not ridiculously overpriced. It certainly hasn't priced itself out of the hot hatch category. There are plenty of hot hatches which cost more, but they do also tend to have a lot more power to begin with. This car doesn't have a huge amount of power to begin with, so what do you get fully tuned? Well, the 1.6 litre engine can be turbocharged up to 284 horsepower and probably a more impressive 240 foot-pounds of torque. Again, not too surprising, given that Mercedes are known for having high torque outputs, generally more on their AMG models, but that does carry over, it would seem, to this car at least on the game. Now, as far as the weight isn't exactly a Mercedes strong point, usually. They tend to be quite heavy, because they're well-built, well-equipped, luxurious cars. This car, kind of worryingly, is an exception to that, because it is lightweight. With the full weight loss package, 937 kilos is the number that you're looking at, and that's pretty good. Now, it is of course a small car, but still, for a Mercedes, that is an impressive weight. Now, the horsepower per tonne does benefit from that, at just over 300, and the PP, thanks to all of its combined specs put together, is a reasonable 465. I would say that's pretty good for this vehicle, and if you think about it, 284 horsepower and 937 kilos is actually pretty strong for that PP level. Something like a Honda Integra with similar specs would be probably 475 pp, maybe a little more. So that's pretty impressive for this car. The question is, though, can it turn those good to impressive numbers into impressive performance? Or does it feel restricted, perhaps, by the fact that it is a mass production non-performance car? Well, I would say to some degree it does benefit from the tuning that you can give it. That being said, this, I would say, shares a similar overall image and method of operation, to some degree, as the similar Audi A2. Similar in as much as they're not the obvious choice. They do have potential, but even with the potential that they do have, they're not necessarily the best choice to go for. They're more the oddball choice, the underestimated choice, the choice for people who don't necessarily want to have a runaway victory. Of course you're going to win a hot hatch match if you use something like a Focus RS, or a HPA Golf, or a Megane RS. They're the obvious choices. For people who don't want to win quite as easily, for instance, you could go for an A2. or a Mercedes A-Class. That's the kind of car that we're talking about. Now, the car, in some ways, particularly with regard to handling, is kind of working against itself to some degree. And the reason why I would say that is because the ultra-compact style of the car, combined with the front-wheel drive and the ultra-lightweight package, would indicate that it's one of the best choices, probably, for tight circuits, such as London, Monaco, etc., where having a tiny, nimble vehicle, especially a lightweight one, could really come in handy. At the same time, though, the car wheel spins a lot, even on the best quality tyres, and considering that even fully tuned, you're not looking at a huge amount of power or torque, really. It's got decent power and torque, but not exactly insane amounts, but it still manages to shred those tyres quite well. Not that that's a good thing, of course. So, although it's not chronic, it's certainly not a Jay Leno tank car in the way that it just constantly wheel spins, it is a constant issue that is there and very willing and ready to come to the surface. When you put your foot down out of corners especially, the car does like to spin up a tyre or two. And although that's not awful in the case of this vehicle, you can certainly work around it and it's still a good car in terms of handling and nimbleness, it is ever present. And there are some other hatches which suffer from that as well. The Focus ST to some degree, the Megane RS even more so, but both of those cars are looking at well over 500 horsepower. This one's only got 280, so it's kind of disappointing that it does that. That being said, it's not a performance car, so it's not designed to deal with that kind of power. Overall, this isn't a vehicle which I would recommend as such, but at the same time I wouldn't say don't buy it. This is one of those vehicles which isn't bad, it's just not great either. It's an option. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.